Hi folks, this is Dr. Rob CYWES. I am the Carb Addiction doc, and as I've been looking at the internet and looking at some of the work that friends that I trust, friends that are mentors for me, some of the work they put out there, I always go, let me think about this a little bit. None of us are always right. And sometimes they're right, I'm also right, or I'm wrong, they're right. Doesn't matter. But I have thoughts on these things, and there's something that's bothered me particularly because my experience with my patient population is a little bit different. Today we're talking about dirty keto. What is dirty keto? It means where you've reduced your carbohydrate consumption, but you're still having days where you're eating them, and you are not as fastidiously obsessive about avoiding carbohydrates. And the question is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it beneficial? Is it harmful? Well, I really want to explore this from the perspective of someone sitting in my chair where I'm watching what people are doing. The first question is, what is the purpose? Are you someone with 20, 30 pounds to lose? Have you been a little bit sloppy and a little bit lazy? Are you pretty healthy, but you want to improve your health? Then if you're in control of the situation, and I do see a lot of people who've just had a sloppy relationship with carbohydrates, dirty keto is absolutely fine. So the premise that we start with is the standard American diet, or the high carbohydrate, low fat diet, especially if it's more plant-based, is the single worst diet a human being can be on. It is the diet that is completely opposite to our design. Completely the opposite to the way we function. So the standard American diet is the single worst thing we can do, and anything we can do better than that is better. So even just having an awareness of two things. Number one, restricting or reducing the obvious itinerant crappy carbohydrates has enormous value. There was a Swedish study that was done several years ago in diabetics that showed that a 10% reduction in carbohydrate consumption has a 50% impact, beneficial impact on type 2 diabetes. Think about that. Think about that. That's important. So even just reducing carbohydrate consumption by obvious carbohydrates. You know what? Let's not supersize this drink, or let's go for the diet soda, not the real soda. I'm going to have the hamburger. I'll eat the bread with the hamburger, but I'm not going to eat the fries. You know what? I don't need dessert with every meal. Hey, let me skip breakfast, or let me have bacon and eggs instead of cereal for breakfast. Or instead of putting honey and jam on my toast, let me put some cheese on my toast and butter. So there are ways to do this, still getting in the enjoyable carbohydrates. Yeah, let me eat some fruit, but I'm going to stop eating the grain products. And grains are probably the single worst source of carbohydrates that you can eat. Grain products, processed or unprocessed. When we talk about processed food, it's almost always grain products. It's okay. At the end of the day, I want to eat a bowl of ice cream. At the end of the day, I want some M&Ms. If you have M&Ms available to you all the time, problem. You know what? In the evening, I'm going to drink a Coke. Maybe I'll have a Diet Coke. Maybe I'll have a Fresca. I really don't have a problem with that. Yeah, this is the Carb Addiction saying that. I don't have a problem with that as a first step toward health improvement. As a first step. I'm not always as draconian as absolutely you must, you have to. I don't do that. I do that a lot. That's what I do in my practice. But the first step, if you're petrified of killing your best friend, sugar and starch, why don't you start by distancing yourself a little bit? Distancing yourself a little bit. And it may be, hey, you know what? I'm not going to eat until lunchtime. I'm not going to eat until lunchtime. I'm going to push eating and drinking, or eating, as deep into the day as I can. Now I'm giving myself a bit of an intermittent fasting window. I'm just going to try to eat lunch and dinner. I'm not going to eat the others. Or I'll eat lunch, I'll eat dinner, and then maybe I'll have some snacks in the evening. Instead of a bag of potato chips, maybe I can do some pork rinds. There are plenty of ways to reduce carbohydrate consumption, which is going to have a general benefit from your health. It may not dramatically drop weight, but it will. It will drop some weight over time. So I have no problem with the concept of carbohydrate reduction or dirty keto. Not only are we going to address the reduction in carbohydrates by category, the other part for dirty keto, otherwise it would just be dirty low carb or partial low carb or carb reduction. The other piece is to start eating more fat. To start introducing sources of saturated fat, whether that's butter, whether it's a ribeye steak, whether it's some fish, whether it's a pork chop or pork ribs, whether it's some chicken with a skin. I don't care what that source of fat is. But introducing sources of animal fat into your diet, mitigating against the carbohydrates. I'd rather you have 2 Big Macs and no fries. And yeah, that's become cost prohibitive right now, but those are not unreasonable early changes. Because the first step is coming to terms with the fact, particularly for my permissive patients, that, hey, yeah, you know what? This is not so awful. It's not so awful. The second part of dirty keto, though, is to understand that what we've been talking about so far is a diet. You're changing what you're eating. And you're coming to terms and convincing yourself that bad things won't happen as you progressively let that go. And it's a perfectly good starting point. Changing what you eat, having an awareness of what you eat, and being proud of those changes. Absolutely fine. Absolutely, absolutely fine. You don't have to start in the deep end of the pool. Let's put our foot in the water first. And for my permissive patients, that's an absolutely plausible place to start. And if you're having conversations with people that say, hell no way am I going to give up my carbohydrates, or I'm not going to eat this, ask them just to make small changes. Can we go from Coke to Diet Coke? Can we give up the bread? Can we find little categories to reduce this? Oh, my whole culture eats rice. You know what? Leave rice till the end. So, starting with an awareness, and really the first phase of addiction management is the contemplation phase. And as part of contemplation, it's the awareness. Perfectly fine to do. But at some point, if this is going to be a sustainable transition, 2 things are needed. The first step is to change your mentality from looking at what you're eating and asking yourself, why am I eating this right now? Why am I eating this? What is the value? And almost always, your awareness is going to tell you that the reason you're eating something that is carbohydrate is not for its nutritional value. It's for its emotional value. I'm a little sad right now. I'm a little bored right now. I'm a little stressed right now. That's why I'm eating this. And perfectly fine, because you want to recognize and acknowledge that relationship between the consumption of carbohydrates and your emotional needs. So the first step is to connect the why. Don't change anything yet, but connect the why. And then the next phase is to say, okay, I recognize I'm a little bored right now. I recognize I'm a little stressed right now. What else can I do? What else can I do to give me that moment of tranquility that reduces my dependency on carbohydrates and on eating and snacking as that source of emotional fulfillment? So early on, dirty keto is great in terms of changing what you're eating and recognizing where the carbohydrates are and recognizing the value of fat. Early satiety, prolonged satiety, the benefit of fat. And reconciling that it's not going to kill you if you eat a little bit of fat or a significant amount of fat. But slowly making the evolutionary transition to away from what toward why. And then finding alternatives for carbohydrates for the emotional restitution. That may be going for a walk, it may be reading, it may be something creative, it may be something spiritual, but making that progressive shift. Because in that way, you can preserve dirty keto and slowly make it less and less and less. That is the intuitive way of making that change. So dirty keto is absolutely fine as a starting point But here's the challenge, folks. For anybody that is moving away from disease, be it obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, if you're just trying to improve your health, dirty keto is a great endpoint. If you're otherwise healthy and you've just had a little bit of abuse, tightening it up is a little bit better. It's like saying, hey, you know what? I've gotten to a point now where I'm drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine every night. I'm just going to back down and drink a glass of wine each night on the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll have a glass of wine. 1 glass, weekdays, I'm fine. That level of control is perfectly fine. If you're an alcoholic, it ain't going to work. So for people who are otherwise healthy, trying to improve their health, dirty keto is great. But for people that are morbidly obese, for people that are type 2 diabetics, for people that are addicted to carbohydrates, it's a great starting point. But it'll always, always, always fail because it's not an endpoint. Because you're asking yourself to manage a relationship that you've lost the capacity to manage. So really define who you are. And it's perfectly fine to start with dirty keto, but move forward. And that's where the addiction approach matters. You can start on the addiction side or you can start on this side. And the final thing I want to say to you is this. If Robert Atkins, if his methodology was sustainable, none of us would be ever using the word keto. Because Atkins was the first major forerunner, the obvious forerunner. There were others before, but the major forerunner of a low carbohydrate diet, using net carbs and diet as a way toward better cardiovascular health. He was a cardiologist, and weight loss. But it was unsustainable because people did not ask the why question. So while my colleagues and a great friend of mine, Eric Westman, is a proponent of dirty keto, I am not. I am not a proponent of dirty keto as a way of life for anyone who has a metabolic problem. For healthy people, absolutely fine, but they never had a problem before. For people like me, fat people, diabetics, unsustainable. Unsustainable. So figure out who you are. If you've got more than 50 pounds to lose, if you have severe insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, not for you. Okay is a starting point, not okay is an end point. So it really does depend on who you are and how you manage your life. But for the most part, in the space I work in, I disagree with dirty keto. I think it's a terrible thing to have as an endpoint because it's a setup for failure. Notes from my clinical practice. I hope that resonates. But it's a great, great tool. If you want to help somebody to start who's resistant, family member, start there. Hey, let's see what we can do. Which one thing can you give up? Start there. I'm the Carb Addiction Doc for a reason. I'm the Carb Addiction Doc because dirty keto as a way of life doesn't work for me and my patients. I hope that perspective helps. I hope that helps you to think about yourself and move yourself forward. If you want help with this, either to start that slow transition or to do it more intensely, give us a shout, 561-517-0642. Text us, WhatsApp us. We can set up an appointment. We can check your blood work and see where you are. And I will give you feedback. I get all these skinny people that have been 10 pounds over. Oh my God, I'm a carb addict. No, you're not. And then I get the 300-pounder that says, oh, I'm heavy boned. Oh, it's my genes. Oh, I don't snack at all. Folks, allow me to help you with reality. And then you can decide if you want to do it or not. You can decide if you agree or not. Give us a shout. But if you like this, if this made you think, if this made you contemplate, if this gave you a better perspective, hit the like button. If you hated what I just said, hit the dislike button. And I'm going to have one from my friend Eric Westman. No, I love him to bits. He's a brilliant man. I've learned so much from him. There's certain things that we both disagree about. As a starting point, no problem. As an end point, problem. But so I'll see that dislike if Eric watches this video. But leave a comment as well. Leave a comment. Because I will respond to those. And I'll learn from them. And hopefully I'll share some things with you. I am the Carb Addiction Doc. Thanks for your support.